Welcome to the bright side of longevity. Join Dr. Roger Landry and guests as they discuss the bright side of getting older through healthy longevity. Guided by research, this lighthearted and educational discussion will leave you with practical tips and ways to impact your lifestyle to brighten life's journey. Patricia Raskin is a pioneer and trailblazer for positive messaging, and she facilitates this work as a trainer, inspiring public speaker, author, entrepreneur, producer, media coach, and talk show host. She is also an award-winning producer and business owner, and she has interviewed over 5,000 people in her career, including experts, authors, and celebrities. Patricia is the host of the new Positive Aging podcast series produced by Rhode Island PBS. Her media programs focusing on positive living have aired on Fox, PBS, NPR, and numerous affiliates. The Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show is currently heard on Voice America and iTunes. Patricia has a master's degree in counseling and is a certified coach. She has worked in the communications, coaching, media, and training fields for over 3 decades. She began her career as a teacher and a guidance counselor. Patricia Raskin is the author of 2 books, Success, Your Dream, and You, and Pathfinding, 7 Principles for Positive Living.
Well, welcome everybody to the bright side of longevity. I'm here with my sidekick guru, Danielle. Hello, Danielle.
Hey, Dr. Roger. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. And you know, because today we've been waiting a long time. Today we have a pro in the whole field of positive aging. I've known Patricia quite a while, much to my benefit. And you heard her bio. She is just out of sight in all the things that she's done. She has made contributions to the whole field of understanding the whole process of aging and positive aging in particular. So, Patricia Raskin, welcome to the show. Thank you. We are graced to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to. This is what you do, and anyone, I hope people look up your podcast, and we will tell them how to do that before we leave, because I believe that the way you do it is a model. It's really just a great thing. Yeah. So, but let's get into some things, because you've learned a lot. You've talked to a lot of very knowledgeable people, celebrities, as well as academics, and who know about this. So I think you have a lot to share. So first of all, when did you begin doing what you're doing? But particularly, when did you get interested in the aging population, and why?
Well, in my 30s, in my early 30s, I was so interested in. I wanted to live to be 100. I remember this so well. And one day it just came to me, I want to be 100. So I started reading about people who lived longest. And in those days, the Hunses were on the map, not as much today, but they were. And so I read about them, and I just was very interested for myself. So I started eating well and doing things, kind of ahead of my time, when, just in drinking water and doing kind of holistic methods was more in its infancy. I'm going back more now into the 80s and the 90s. So then, and I started doing television in the early 80s, and I did it as a hobby. I was a teacher and a guidance counselor, but I had been a singer as a kid. So I was used to performing and using my voice. So I'm still using my voice. So I started doing these programs. And in the early 90s, I had moved from my native New England. I was living in North Carolina, and I had an opportunity in 1995 to do 3 documentaries for the North Carolina Division of Aging.
Nice.
And one was called Positive Aging in North Carolina in 1995. And this was,
Wow,
way ahead.
yeah, way ahead.
Right. And I wrote it. I produced it. We went on camera. I worked with their board. And it was really exciting. We did one on the White House Conference on Aging in those days. I went to Washington with them. We did one on the older worker in North Carolina. And they all, two of them aired on North Carolina PBS. And that was, almost 25 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
So now I've continued my work, and I do a lot of corporate training and wellness, and I do a lot of programs. My programs have always continued, and I've done programs, and as you've read the bio. However, when I came back to my native land of New England, I'm originally from Connecticut, but I live in Rhode Island now. I have family here. So when I came back here, I had another show, and that was on one of the networks here, and I had that on the air for 10 years. And then that went off the air for a while. I still had a different show. And I remember going into talking with a gentleman who runs the foundation in Rhode Island. And he had listened to my show for 10 years in Rhode Island, and he loved my show. He said, "Love what you do with positive living." So I said, "Can I come in and talk to you, since you know everybody in the state?" So we're just chatting. And I was telling him what I had done. And I told him what I had done in North Carolina. And he said to me, "Well, why don't you contact Rhode Island Public Television?" And I went, "Really?" I mean, I didn't think of it. So I said to him, "Well, would you be willing to just, write a note on my behalf?" He said, "Sure." So he writes a letter to the CEO of Rhode Island. This is now 3 years ago, actually 2018. It's almost 4 years ago.
Huh.
And he writes the letter, and I get a letter back immediately. "We were very interested in this topic. Come in and talk to us." Fast forward, they love the topic. I write them a big proposal. They love the proposal. Now we're going to do a TV pilot. So we come up with the pilot, we do the whole pilot, and we did something on technology, we did something on Parkinson's and dance. I mean, it was really interesting. So we had this pilot all done. Now I'm into about 2019. And then we finished it. And now we're going into the end of 2019, and COVID starts to hit.
Right.
And our next step was, now we had the pilot, but before we aired it, we need to start the series. And we needed to raise money for the series. Then COVID hit. Everything stopped. So I thought, you know what, that's the end of this. And I kept having friends say to me, "I'm telling you, something's going to happen with them." And I kept saying, well, so I would stay in touch with them, drip, and you just keep staying in touch. And it ended up that they had a consultant come in last year that said, "You need to do a podcast," which I have been doing. So this TV series, which didn't happen, morphed into a podcast series. That's how it happened. And I ended up bringing in all the sponsors for the podcast series. And we started in, we talked about it in like April, May. We started in August taping, and we taped all the interviews, and they're now airing until December 13th. So they started in September, 13 series. And they're really great. I mean, and you're one of my guests, Roger. So how I got into this is I wanted to live better longer. I knew I wanted to live to be old age, and I wanted to be healthy and happy. And so I started young. I started in my 30s and 40s with more of a holistic lifestyle, which I'm glad I did, because I'm kind of an anxious, nervous type to begin with, a little bit high strung. So all of that has really, really helped me calm down and be introspective, and it's just been a lifesaver.
That's a great story. And first of all, another good thing coming out of COVID. There wasn't a lot of good things, but this is one. I'm sorry about the TV series. I'm sure that was great, but your podcast series, I believe it does. It knocks it out of the park. Now, you started young. Don't you think that your message has widespread? It's not just older adults. It's sort of like, here's a message to humans in order to have a longer lifespan and a better one.
Well, but that's the operative word. Do you want a longer lifespan? Do you want a better one? Some people don't. They want to live for today. They want to, just party and do whatever they want. And that's fine. But eventually it catches up to your body. You know that, Roger.
Oh, yes. I do.
You 30, 40, 50, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, what's happening? So, yes, it appeals to every age. You start young if you want this lifestyle. if you want to live long and be healthy. Then if you want to call it a sacrifice, I don't call it a sacrifice because I love what I do. Other people might say, well, how come you're not doing this or that or the other? Whether it's, eating tons of candy bars or, drinking a lot. I mean, whatever it is, I think if we can do it in moderation and we also understand our body, yes, we really do need to start young.
You're living your purpose. That's what you're doing, truly living your purpose. Your purpose is to spread the word so that more people can enjoy the full component of their lifespan, or at least as much as possible at high quality. And like, I know this very well. Our whole team knows it. You got to be a role model for what you
Yeah.
sell or what you talk about.
I just want to share one more thing before you and that is that yesterday I interviewed a cardiologist. And it was interesting because we were talking about this. He was talking about the plaque that goes in the heart arteries. And he said, you have to start young in terms of eating well, because otherwise the plaque is going to go on the heart and it doesn't happen overnight. And he said, you can't start in your 60s. I mean, you can, but it starts to build as you're eating these things or not eating well or eating high fat or whatever it is. We know all of the good things we need to eat. But what he's saying is that as you are not doing these things, it's building up over time in your body. You're not going to see it right away, but it takes its toll. And this is from a cardiologist.
Yes. No, he's absolutely right. And it's that way in every aspect of your lifestyle, not only the physical, but, I think the social and the intellectual. I mean, we get into patterns, and those patterns can be not sort of launching us into what can be a healthy longevity, but just the other thing, starting to fight chronic disease. And again, like you alluded to, we're living long, but there's no guarantee that the quality is there. So anyway, it's really up to us. It's about lifestyle, and it's not difficult.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking, I actually started working, Dr. Roger, with you and Masterpiece in my mid-30s. And when I was hearing these things, I knew about, I was teaching yoga at the time and meditation and exercising. So I was doing some good things, but there were so many components where you could be doing better. And when I heard it at the time, I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this now? Why wait until, things build up and you're forced to in like your 60s and 70s? So it really should have an appeal for all ages, because people in the 30s back then were already saying, I'm old, I'm too old for that. And which is just crazy.
Well, it's crazy. You think when you're young, you're indestructible. I know I was flying jets and going fast and headed to the ground. I really didn't think I was going to live that long anyway. But then what happened? You survived,
So, okay. So I have to ask Patricia, present company aside, Dr. Roger, who have been some of your most memorable guests? We know you're going to say Dr. Roger, but who else would you say was truly memorable?
Too kind.
Maya Angelou.
Whoa,
yeah.
really?
It was, and I had the honor of interviewing her twice. And
Wow.
I remember when I interviewed her, this was probably 7-8 years ago. I remember it was like when I got off the phone, it was like I was almost shaking. She was just the most remarkable woman. I mean, this is a woman who went through hell as a young person. I think she lost her voice. I think she had been molested. I mean, just a lot of things. And of course, she was a woman of color, in an age where there was tremendous discrimination that was open. And she had not a mean bone in her body. She almost reminded me of a Mother Teresa. I mean, it was that kind of energy.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And then I actually, after that, talked to a gentleman who's a producer who knew her very well, and talked about how she would invite him over for tea, and she would dress up just to see him and say, "Good morning, Mr. Jones. I'm so happy to be with you." I mean, this woman lived in the moment. Every moment was precious. She was remarkable. I mean, truly.
Just saying her name, we could see the change over you. You just seem to just
Yeah.
get so peaceful,
She was great. Another great one is the actress Jane Seymour, who's a Renaissance woman who, has her own skincare line, but she's an Emmy and a winner and a Golden Globe winner. And she's very admirable too. I mean, there's a lot of them. Dr. John Gray, And he wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. You know, there's a lot of Joan London. There's a lot of really great people, but Maya Angelou really stood out.
Yeah, you've talked to some remarkable people, and I'm kind of envious. Happy for you, but envious for us.
Yeah.
So when you are choosing a guest, how do you pick somebody to be on Positive Aging?
Well, for this series, I really wanted to choose people that were moving forward in their life. I didn't want to talk so much about what are all the diseases and, you know, what are the issues. I wanted to talk more about what can we do at our age in terms of technology, lifestyle, you know, longevity, which Dr. Landry and I talked about, business, finances, relationships. How do you find love when you're older? You know, and you certainly can. And so we talked, those were a lot of them. We talked about ageism on the show. As I said, technology, a company in Rhode Island that has robotic pets. And these pets help seniors who are lonely. And so really helps with the loneliness factor. And they make noises and they, you know, they're like little robots. So, I mean, we did a lot of very positive finances. How do you safeguard your finances when you're older? So it's very much topics, nutrition. I mean, we talked about things that you would talk about at any age, but there's more of consideration when you get older. We do it a little differently than we do when we're younger. And so that's what we looked at.
We want to continue to provide information that is valuable and reliable to our listeners. We welcome your comments and suggestions for topics that are important to you. Please see the description of this episode to contact the Brightside team.
So with all of those topics that you dealt with and all relate to positive aging, do you have sort of a top three or a top two? What do you think are the keys?
For positive aging,
Yes.
attitude, attitude, attitude.
All right, there's the top three.
I'll be honest here. I mean, I said this before, so there's a little self-disclosure here. I am highly sensitive, which is great for my work, right? It makes me really good at what I do. It's not always so great in my personal life because I take things personally, things really affect me. And so this has really helped me, is being able to have that attitude where I can say, okay, is this my problem? Is this your problem? How do I forgive? How do I understand? So teaching this work has really helped me. And you teach others, you know, in the book by Richard Bach, Illusions, it says, teach others what you need to learn most for yourself. So I think it has taught me how to be a little more objective. I'm still sensitive, but I'm able to recover much faster because I'm able to say, all right, let's look at it from another point of view. You know, how would they feel? And my work has really been my teacher because I interview people like you. I teach courses on conflict resolution or stress management or burnout, and I'm learning. And honestly, I think even more than therapy or counseling, I've learned most from teaching it because they're the people, they're doing it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And with so much history that you have and so much at your disposal with all the conversations you've had and everything you've learned, you're trying to reach older adults, right? You're trying to motivate them to live in a better way. What message, if there's one or whatever, seems to resonate most? This is from the feedback that you may have gotten from your audience, that sort of thing. What message tends to resonate most, do you think, with older adults in their aging journey? Positive.
I think that older adults want to be mobile. They want to be connected. They want to keep their independence. They, you know, they want to, I think, and you see it today where people either want to age in place, they might want to downsize, but they don't necessarily want to go into an assisted living, which can be a wonderful opportunity. I'm not in any way, I mean, it can be wonderful, but I'm saying that more people, I think, want to stay in their community, around the people, around their caregivers, their physicians, their families. So I think it's independence. I think it's mobility. I think it's connection. I think that's what we all want.
I believe, I know I do, and I think you're spot on from my experiences as to what people want. It's not profound. It's just,
And
to be
respect.
fully engaged in life. I'm sorry, what was that?
And respect. And
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that goes to the blue zones, and that goes to the role of older adults in society and ageism and so many things that you are working on to you get those any impediments there are to being fully engaged in society as I am out of the way. And as we see in the blue zones where people lie about their age, say they're older, right? Yeah, because it's a time when they feel even more engaged. That's
it,
that's fantastic.
it's interesting. I interviewed Dan Buettner from Blue Zones. I've interviewed him more than once, and he's remarkable. I mean, he found the 5 places on the planet where people live the longest and are healthiest, and it's really something to look at. And he really does promote a plant-based diet. I mean, not fanatically, but that he's saying from what he's seen that the healthiest people eat more of a plant-based diet.
Yep. And for those, if you want to call it something different, along the lines of the Mediterranean diet, because as you know, it's what we've eaten for most of the time we've been on Earth as humans. So it shouldn't be a surprise, but we have to relearn some things, and well, that's fantastic. I get to meet him, but I didn't ever got to interview him. So congrats to you.
So now we're both envious of you, Patricia. But you hit on something really important when you're talking about how the work has almost helped and healed you. And that's a really good point about finding your purpose, because I feel the same way in the work that I do, where because I am also a highly sensitive person, where just from doing the work and working with others, it helps you as well. And maybe that's a good indicator that you found your purpose if you're receiving and you're passing it on to other people. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that. So we talked about all the positive things of why we do this, but what are some of the deterrents of positive aging?
Well, I mean, the first thing, and Dr. Landry, I'd love your comment on this. For me, I think it's when we try to do too much, when we don't know our limits. Oh, well, I can just run over there and then we slip. Right. So we do have to be more mindful as we get older. Our balance isn't as strong. I mean, I'm very active, but my balance isn't what it was. And so I'm more careful when I step down than before you'd run out the door. So I think that we do need to be more mindful. And if you can call that a deterrent, or you can call it just something else that we have to deal with. We may not run as fast or walk as fast or hear as well or or any of the senses, and that's okay. If we're still doing it and it's still working, so it takes us a little longer. So it's an extra 4 steps. So it takes me longer to do something than maybe my daughter. Okay, but I did it.
I recently, and Roger can attest to this because I've texted and called him as my personal physician, even though he's not my physician, he's my friend and colleague, where, I'm dancing around the living room and all of a sudden I hear and feel a snap and I'm like, oh, what just happened? And like something went very wrong in my leg. And I'm like, Dr. Rogers, should I be worried about this? And you learn, or, hopefully you only do it once before you realize, okay, I need to stretch a little more than maybe I needed to do a year ago. So making those modifications, I think we're all there. And I suspect the only difference between with aging and younger is when we're younger, we don't pay them as much attention. You just get hurt and you think, oh, it's part of being athletic.
That's very true. I agree with that. Yeah.
Well, you heal quickly as a young person, and takes a lot longer as you get older. But the whole idea, as you said, about accommodation, that we're not what we were, and we keep moving and learning and connecting and having purpose, and we can be the best we can be and at high function, but not where we were. And so to lament that, first of all, say, oh, I'm not what I was before, or to push it to the limits where you can potentially hurt yourself and then hurt your level of functionality. That's very good advice, Patricia. I believe I agree with you. So you've already alluded to the fact that how you live since you were in your 30s. And I think that that you started early, and so you've applied this positive aging to your own life, certainly recently when you've been doing it, but even way before that. So, we got a lot of we baby boomers around, and what piece of advice would you give them? So, I think you've already alluded to this, but I don't think you can say it enough. Um, so what if they haven't been like you, starting early, and they're a baby boomer, and they're, the 50s, 60s, even 70s? What would you advise them if they want to experience positive aging when they haven't been positive living?
All right. It's never too late, and I want to tell you a story because it's one of my favorite stories. So I was doing this documentary I was telling you about for Rhode Island Public Television. This was in 1995. And this is quite a miraculous and interesting story. It is never too late to start. And so here's an example. So I'm in the studio and we're finishing up the end of it. And I remember this. And this man had come in with all these beautiful paintings. And for some reason, he didn't like what was happening. And he just got angry and he said, "I'm not doing this." And he leaves the station. And I'm sitting and I'm saying, well, now this is great. How am I going to end this documentary? And this is a true story. I'm only in the studio maybe like once a month. And I walk out to the reception thinking, oh no, now what? And the woman says to me, "This came for you." And I said, "Really?" And it's a press release. And I go into the conference room and I'm sitting down holding my head in my hands. And I open this thing up and it says, "Harley Potter, age 102-year-old golfer, to play in the senior classics." Guess where he lives? In the same town that I was sitting.
Oh,
Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Well, I went crazy. I went, "Are you kidding me?" So I found his daughter, who was 75. Within 2 days, he was on the golf course and I was interviewing him. He was 102. He's in my book. He's 102. He started playing golf. He says, "I started playing golf at 92." He said, and then my score was 100, my last score. And he had only 25% hearing in one ear. So when you interviewed him, you walked up to his ear. We went on the golf course with him. His daughter told me later, he died at 106. Everyone loved him. His granddaughter put a Purple Heart in his casket. He was just one of these people that was in moderation his whole life. He was always kind. He was, more of a simple, just very kind to people, and just believed in moderation. And that had a profound effect on me. I still have the video and the stories in my book, Pathfinding, 7 Principles for Positive Living. But to find him that way, to get this press release out of the blue, that he happened to be from the same town that I was in.
it's meant to be, Patricia.
Further proof that she has found her purpose. Everything went
out of
all
San
lines.
Antonio, Texas, where he was playing. That's where the press release came from. It was like, yeah. So the answer to your question, Roger, is it's never too late. Now, I'll tell you, I have a dear friend. He got his bachelor's degree at 40. He got his master's degree at 50. He started playing skiing, I think, in his 60s. And what else did he start doing? Playing tennis in his 60s. And he started dancing in his 80s.
That's a model. We talk about all the time. If we want our brain to be functioning, we should learn new things. And there you go, learning new things. Plus, getting out of your comfort zone. That's a magnificent story. That would leave a huge impression on me also. So I'm not surprised. So I'm glad you had that experience.
And I happen to know that Dr. Roger became a very good artist over COVID between what did you say your strongest area? Because you did some pastels, you did some charcoal, pencil painting.
Yeah, well, thanks for mentioning it. No, pastels seem to be, I didn't want to get too into it too deeply. So with acrylics and everything. So, and I like to draw when I'm traveling. So that's an easy way. So yes, pastels. My wife just had her lens replaced. She had it, and she just looked at my art and she says, "Whoa, I can see it now. That's really good."
So
I
before
thought
she was just being polite, now
I
she can
thought,
actually see it.
All right.
that's right.
So I have a question. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Of course you are.
Always.
All
You
right.
can do whatever you want. This is your time.
All right. So, Dr. Landry, Roger, I know you've been married a long time and you've been happily married. You have a long longevity in your marriage. So, as an older adult, what has made your marriage work over time with all the ups and downs? That's something that I talk about on the show, and I'd love you to talk about that.
Well, that's a great question, but the thing that comes first, it's forever changing. You know, I think when marriages don't make it, it's when they grow at a markedly different rate. Because we grow as we get old, at least we should, and some faster than others. And so if you get distance between there, it's like being with another person, and then that can put the marriage at risk. But it's accommodating, as we would say before, relative to the physical component, but it's accommodating to the emotional needs of your spouse. It's accommodating to the differences in the context of before you're just you just got married, then you have children, and then you have adolescents, and then you have no kids, and those are all markedly different situations. And so it's the ability, I think, to accommodate and adapt and realize that it's not all rainbows and unicorns. There are times when I'm glad we didn't have any guns in the house, you know. And then there are times when, you know, it's just it's wonderful. It's the nature of life. I mean, if you had to predict what any one life is like, it would be ups and downs like a sine wave, and a marriage is the same. And hopefully you take them at about the same time and not totally out of sync, you know, one up when one's down. But
Do you think the values are important, that you have the same values?
of course, yes. I think my wife is very political. She came from a political family, and if I weren't basically aligned and these are about values, these are not just political beliefs. I think
Right.
we're at a point where we're talking about basic human values, and if we were not in agreement there, that, you know, it wouldn't work. So yes, I agree with you. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a religious thing. I think it has to be at least about how we respect other humans, how we
Yes.
respect the environment, how we respect animals, and
Yes.
sort of things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this whole
That's what I
time,
want to show on
oh,
my
go ahead.
show. That's the kind of thing I want to keep talking about on my show. We need to talk about that more. We talk enough about what doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
Sorry, Danielle.
50,
Oh, no.
53 years and counting, Patricia. So
Wow.
Yeah, I
Well,
was going to say, you know, the listeners can't see, we can see each other as we're talking. And even while Roger's talking about the ups and downs, there's this huge smile on his face. I mean, that's the sign of a marriage that works. So,
well,
um, so,
thanks for the question. She won't like the gun story, but she'll like the rest of it.
so Patricia, what's next for you and with positive aging?
well, I'm working on developing another series. So we did the 13 weeks and a longer series. So I'm working on doing that and having Dr. Roger on my show again, of course. So I'm working on that, and I still do a lot of corporate webinars on conflict resolution. I just did one this morning on respect and civility, everything we're talking about, a whole webinar for a company on what's civility, how do you show civility, how do you listen effectively, same stuff, stress management, how can you be more self-aware, all the stuff we talk about. This is,
Bravo.
and so I'm either teaching it right in a webinar for a company, or I'm interviewing people. I'm getting this word out is what I'm doing. And that's what and basically because I want the world to be kinder. I want the world to be kinder for me. You know, I want to live a better life, and I want to live a life where I feel there's possibility, not, oh, I'm just going to, wilt on the vine.
Bravo, Patricia. Bravo. I recently traveled to both Canada and Portugal, and I was so taken as to how kind in general people were to each other. Well, Americans, we're kind, but we've kind of lost our way right now, and we're so divided. But civility is it's key, and respect, and yeah. Good luck, and again, that's a great topic for you to tackle. Big one, but you can do it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you might have already answered the wrap-up question. If you could sum this up as one major takeaway for our listeners, what would you like to leave them with?
Keep growing, keep going, believe in yourself, get as much support as you can for what you believe in, and believe in the dream. Have your vision and keep it.
Well, thank you, Patricia. You were most gracious to be on the show. You're such a generous person. Thank you for that generosity. Thank you for the wise words, because they were indeed wise. And you are doing such spectacular work. I'm just in awe of the reaches and the network and the messaging and the skills that you bring to this whole area of positive aging. You bring such hope, I think, to people that they indeed can enjoy a healthy longevity and positive aging. And that's what we're about also, Danielle and I and our team. Anything we can do to assist you, because I think you're on a noble journey. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Danielle and Dr. Landry, for such an inspiring interview that really touched my heart. Thank you.
You've been listening to Dr. Roger and Friends, The Bright Side of Longevity. If you like the show, please rate and review, and be sure to click to follow.